My dad and mom will be staying with us for 2 weeks starting this weekend, my husband casually declared after returning from work. Without even bothering to ask me, he would unilaterally decide when his parents would visit, and I had reached my limit with his arrogance. Wait a minute, again? They were just here last month, weren't they? What's your problem? Are you treating my parents as if they're intruders? That's not what I meant. You're my wife, and all you need to do is make them feel welcome. My husband treats me like a housemaid. It seems like he didn't care about how I felt. I can't bear this kind of life anymore. Just because they're my in-laws, it doesn't mean that I should tolerate everything. I'm definitely going to escape from this situation. My name is Judy. I'm 30 years old. 3 years ago, I married my coworker and resigned from my job when we got married. I want you to be a full-time housewife and support family, my husband asked me, so I became a homemaker. 2 years after we got married, I became pregnant. Currently, I'm living busy days, raising our 1-year-old daughter, Alice. My husband's name is Kyle, who is also 30 years old. Recently, he seems to be in line for a promotion at his company. Due to this, he's been working a lot of overtime and weekend shifts, so we seldom have time as a family. Normally, he'd contact me if he's going to be late, but on this day, he hadn't come home even when it was 8 p.m. I became worried and texted him, but there was no response. After waiting anxiously, he finally came home just after midnight. You're still up. Why didn't you respond even once? I messaged you so many times. I couldn't help it, right? I was doing overtime. Overtime? No matter how busy you are, couldn't you at least send a single text saying, I'm doing overtime and will be late? I was worried because there was no response from you at all. Judy, you're being overly dramatic. Stop making such a fuss just because I got home a little late. What's with that tone? I was worried about you. It seemed my worries are not reaching him at all. Kyle just responded with a flat, yeah, sorry about that, and headed to the bathroom. He wasn't always like this. The changes in Kyle began after our daughter was born a year ago. That being said, I believe Kyle was genuinely happy about Alice's birth. Although he wasn't present during the delivery, he came to the hospital right after she was born. Both sets of parents were delighted, and I still remember how truly happy we were. The following month after Alice's birth, the in-laws came to stay with us, and they stayed for 2 whole weeks. I was exhausted, mentally and physically, from my single-handed newborn baby care, but Kyle decided to invite the in-laws without consulting me. Of course, I firmly protested. But Kyle persisted. My folks just want to see their grandchild. He didn't care about my opinions. Whenever I showed any signs of displeasure, he would respond with even more irritation. And he would always spit out the same line. Are you treating my parents like they're in your way? He said. That was the trigger. And from that point on, the in-laws began to stay at our house for 2 weeks, almost every month. While they played with Alice, they did not lift a finger to help with household chores. I was the only one who had to take care of their laundry, meals, and everything on top of looking after Alice. Kyle was often coming home late due to overtime and away working on weekends, so dealing with his parents fell entirely onto me. The additional burden was unbearable, as I was already overwhelmed with taking care of Alice. Nevertheless, that day, Kyle casually announced, "Oh, by the way, my folks are coming to stay again this weekend." Wait a minute, again? They were just here last month. What, are you treating my parents like they're in the way? That's not what Anyway, you're my wife, and you should host them nicely. Kyle never agreed with my opinions, and my frustrations kept piling up day by day. But thinking of my little daughter, I couldn't just leave him. At that time, all I could do was silently accept what he said. A few days later, as usual, my husband left for work, and the doorbell rang just after 10 a.m. Here they are again. Considering Kyle is at work, it would be nicer if they could at least come late in the afternoon or even in the evening. Holding these grievances within, I opened the front door. Sure enough, there stood my in-laws. Somehow I managed to force a smile. Good morning, Father, Mother. Hey there, Judy. Here we are again. Where's little Alice? Let me hold her right away. Alice is in her room, but she just fell asleep. What? She's sleeping? Then I'll hold her. Wait a minute, dear. I'm the one who should hold her first. As they engaged in this banter, they barged into the house. They lifted Alice, sleeping peacefully in her crib, and started a tug-of-war over her. I tried to stop them. "She's sleeping!" But they paid no heed. Crying out over who gets to hold Alice, they ended up waking her up with the noise. And then, of course, Alice started crying. As soon as Alice started crying, the in-laws thrusted her back at me. "Oh, she's crying again. This kid cries all the time, doesn't she?" "Yeah, really? Kyle didn't cry this much. Judy, are you sure you're giving her enough love?" "Of course I am." I couldn't stand their comments any longer, so I chimed in. "She usually sleeps just fine. She's crying now because the two of you were shouting over her." "What? Are you trying to say it's our fault?" "Oh, goodness, Judy, that's a harsh thing to say. We're here trying to dote on our granddaughter, and instead of thanking us, you complain." "I didn't mean to complain. It's just that—" "Now I've got a bad taste in my mouth. I'm feeling a bit peckish, too. Can you make us something?" "Well, I'm going to take a break. Judy, can you brew us some tea? Oh, and don't forget the cookies." Despite Alice crying at the top of her lungs, they behaved just like that. If they're hungry, they could eat outside. If they want tea, they could brew it themselves. Even though I thought that in my heart, I couldn't say it out loud. I stood in the kitchen holding my sobbing daughter and catered to my in-laws' demands. For the next 2 weeks, I was busy without a break. My in-laws, and of course, my husband, didn't help with the housework at all. Eventually, I couldn't bear it anymore, and the night my in-laws left, I complained to my husband. "Hey, about your parents, can't they reduce the frequency of their visits a bit?" "What are you talking about? You're saying you don't like my parents coming?" My husband immediately retorted, and I was taken aback. "It's not that I dislike it, I just think they visit too often. Plus, staying for 2 weeks, that's way too long." "It's just 2 weeks, isn't it? Besides, they don't come every month. Don't complain too much." My husband sighed deeply and didn't even try to make eye contact with me. Nothing was going to be changed for the better. I thought, and I pleaded with him again. "Listen to me. Seriously. I'm busy taking care of Alice, and it's tough to also take care of your parents on top of it. Kyle, you don't even help me at all, and I've got too much on my shoulders." "Huh? Don't talk like my parents are a burden. They're taking care of Alice, and I can't believe you can say such a thing." "Taking care? As soon as Alice cries, they push her on to me. You're always like that, Kyle, just doting on her when you're in a good mood, and you're not really caring for her." "Give me a break. Do you realize who you and Alice are living off of?" "What? Why do you have to bring it up? I became a housewife because you wanted me to, Kyle." "Shut up. Isn't it the fact that you're living off my money? Stop complaining and properly treat my parents." His loud shouting voice woke up Alice. Immediately, Alice started to cry, and he left the room with an annoyed look on his face. Why? How can he make such a face to his own daughter? It's his fault that Alice woke up in the first place, because he was shouting. Can't he help with housework and childcare just a little? I had nowhere to direct my anger and frustration, and tears welled up in my eyes. Hidden by the sound of my daughter's cries, I wept quietly. Even after that, my relationship with my husband didn't improve, and the days passed by. It had been a while. Around that time, I received a phone call from my mother who lives far away. "Hello, Judy. Do you have any plans this weekend?" "No plans in particular. What's up?" "Well, actually, there's a funeral of a friend nearby. I haven't seen Alice for so long. I was thinking I'd like to visit." "Really? I'd be so happy. Please come visit." "Oh, I'm glad. If it's not too much trouble, could I possibly stay for one night?" "Of course. I'll let Kyle know." The unexpected news of my mother's visit filled me with joy. What should we eat? What should we talk about? I was filled with anticipation. But when I told my husband about my mother's visit when he got home, he returned an unexpected answer. "Huh? What are you talking about? That's out of the question." Wait a minute. Why is it out of the question?" "This weekend, my mom and dad are coming over. We don't have room to accommodate your mother. I don't want to be bothered either." "Huh? Your parents are coming again?" "Stop saying again. We should be grateful they're even coming." "Huh? Grateful? What is he talking about? I don't see how this is something to be grateful for when it only adds to my burden. Normally, I would back down to avoid a fight, but I couldn't give in this time. I made up my mind, and once again confronted him. Isn't it strange? Why is it fine for your parents but not for my mother? Huh? Well, of course the husband's parents come first. What? That's not fair. And the ratio is off. Your parents are here nearly every month, but my mother can't even come once a year? Since Alice was born, my mother hasn't seen her. Well, send her some photos or something. She doesn't need to come all the way. She's only coming because she has a funeral to attend. It's only for one night. Why do you always prioritize your parents so much? You're the worst. The words I blurted out, "You're the worst," seemed to have struck a nerve. He furrowed his brows and glared at me. You'd better watch out your attitude. I just meant just for one day we could have my mother. Enough. I'm the one paying for the rent, the groceries, all the living expenses. In other words, I get to decide who gets to come to this house. Shut up and do as I say, you parasite. At that moment, all the frustrations I had been suppressing exploded. All I asked was to host my mother for just one day. And yet, why do I have to be berated like this? And a parasite? Really? How could he say such a thing? Who does he think does all the housework while he's out making money? Enough is enough. I'll show him. It was at that moment that I decided to divorce my husband. To set an appropriate stage for it, just a little more patience was needed. I ended up explaining the situation to my mother and told her we couldn't host her. The weekend arrived and the in-laws came. My husband, unusually, had no work that day. Thanks for hosting us again, Judy. Is Alice awake yet? Yes, she's awake. Oh, what perfect timing. Let me hold her. Like always, the in-laws stormed into our house without any hesitation. My husband just sat there, grinning like a fool. While I was preparing some tea, my mother-in-law and husband approached me grinning. Judy, we always feel bad, but since we help look after Alice like this, you must be grateful, right? Absolutely. It's all thanks to Mom and Dad. Oh, by the way, Judy, this time they're staying for 3 weeks. That's fine. This will be the last time anyway. Upon hearing my reply, my husband and his parents let out a synchronized, "Huh?" After a moment of shock, my husband frantically asked, Hey, Judy, what the hell are you saying? What do you mean by the last time? I mean exactly what I said. I can't deal with you all anymore. What? Don't joke with me. If you keep talking like that, I'll divorce you. Fine. What? Here you go. I handed him the divorce papers I had filled out in advance. The color drained from Kyle's face as I thrust the papers at him. What the hell is this? A joke, right? Do you think I'd joke about this? I'm serious. I've told my mom, and I've decided to leave this house and go back to my parents' home. What? I won't let you do that. We are not getting a divorce. Even his parents joined in as I stood there in silence. What Kyle says is right. You've been leeching off of him, and now you're acting all high and mighty. You're living off Kyle, and yet you're taking this attitude even with us. The three of them started hurling insults at me one after another, but I no longer needed to endure it. They are no longer my family or anything else to me. Taking a deep breath, I let them have it. Enough with you and your goddamn bullshit. You think just because I'm quiet, you can say whatever you want? Do you have any idea how much I've had to put up with? It was the first time I've ever talked back like this in front of them. So all three of them were taken aback. Eventually, Kyle started opening and closing his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but I didn't let him and continued. I wouldn't wish to be part of a family like yours anymore. Taking care of Alice? You're just intruding for your own satisfaction. Just holding her when she's in a good mood doesn't mean you're looking after her. Well, wait, Judy, let's calm down a bit. Shut up. Since Alice was born, how many times have you changed her diaper, fed her a bottle, bathed her? You're just messing around with her when she's in a good mood. You let your parents stay over all the time, but not my mom? That's bullshit. Why should only your parents be treated so well? I've had enough of babysitting you three. My outburst left the three of them standing there in shock. Having vented all my grievances, I grabbed my bare essentials, picked up Alice, and left the house. I then headed straight for my parents' house. I had already told my parents about the situation, so they warmly welcomed me. I ignored all the calls and emails from Kyle. If he refuses to agree to the divorce, I'm considering going for mediation. The divorce will most likely proceed on the grounds of his fault, because I discovered his affair. The woman he was cheating with was a colleague from the company where I used to work. One of my ex-colleagues who had worked at the same place as him told me about the affair and even provided photos as evidence. All his claims of working late or on weekends were lies. No wonder he gradually became distant after Alice was born. Based on the evidence of the affair, I hired a lawyer, and eventually the divorce was finalized. I was able to collect the agreed-on alimony from Kyle. Of course, I reported the affair to our company, and both my ex-husband and his mistress were fired. Their relationship seemed to have quickly fizzled out due to this, and they parted ways. Having lost his job, and with the alimony payment creating a debt, I heard that he's now constantly being hounded by debt collectors. His parents, my former in-laws, who used to rely on him, are apparently now having a harder life than before. I don't have a shred of sympathy for them, since it's all a product of their own actions. As for me, I've been raising my daughter, with the support of my parents at our family home. There are tough times, sure, but thanks to my parents' help, we're managing to lead a peaceful life. My daughter is only a year old. There will come a day when she'll wonder about her father. When that day comes, I'll explain everything to her in words that she can understand. I plan to pour all the love I can into my daughter for as long as I can.